The sea was calm as the massive Nimitz-class aircraft carrier cut through the water like a moving city of steel. Its deck glowed under low light, aircraft secured, crews rotating through routines refined by decades of doctrine and experience. To the casual observer, it looked exposed, huge, unmistakable, almost inviting. To those who understood naval warfare, it was one of the most heavily defended objects ever built. On shore, far beyond the horizon, Houthi commanders watched grainy feeds and reports compiled over weeks. Satellite imagery, intercepted radio chatter, and past encounters had convinced them that opportunity had arrived. The carrier's size fed their confidence. Surely something so large could not be invulnerable. The plan was simple in theory: overwhelm the defenses with volume. Drones would draw fire and attention. Missiles would follow. Speed and surprise would do the rest. Launch orders were given. Missiles rose from hidden positions, engines flaring briefly before vanishing into the sky. Drones followed, low and fast, skimming above the waves. To those watching from afar, the moment felt historic, a chance to strike a symbol of American power and prove that even giants could bleed. On the carrier, the first alerts came quietly. Radar screens populated with tracks, classified and prioritized in seconds. There was no shouting, no panic. The crew had trained for this exact scenario countless times. Escort destroyers adjusted positions instinctively, forming overlapping defensive arcs. Electronic warfare systems hummed to life, bending and distorting the battle space before the attackers even knew they were being watched. Fighter jets were launched not as a reaction, but as part of a rehearsed sequence. Sensors talked to sensors. Ships talked to aircraft. Missiles inbound were tagged, tracked, and assessed long before they entered lethal range. Some targets disappeared entirely, confused by electronic countermeasures. Others were intercepted far from the carrier itself, destroyed so cleanly that debris never reached the water. From the Houthi perspective, information was limited and misleading. Signals dropped, feeds froze. It became difficult to tell which weapons were still flying and which had already been neutralized. Yet confidence lingered. Silence, they believed, meant impact. It did not. As the final hostile tracks faded from the carrier's displays, the ship continued forward without changing course. Flight operations resumed. No damage reports were filed. No emergency protocols remained active. The attack had not even slowed the rhythm of operations. But the true mistake was not the failed strike, it was what the strike revealed. Every launch had exposed a location. Every transmission had identified a node. Every attempt to guide a weapon had painted a map of capabilities and limitations. The Houthis believed they had taken a bold risk against a powerful enemy. In reality, they had provided clarity. And clarity in modern warfare is far more dangerous than firepower. Part 1 ends not with destruction, but with a quiet realization forming on only one side of the battlefield. The carrier had not been challenged, it had been studied. The aftermath of the failed attack was marked not by explosions or immediate retaliation, but by something far more unsettling: silence. The Nimitz-class carrier strike group did not change course, did not issue threats, and did not rush to make a public display of force. To outside observers, it appeared as though nothing had happened at all. But beneath the surface, the consequences of the attack were already unfolding with methodical precision. Every missile launch, every drone signal, and every attempt at guidance had produced data. What the Houthis believed was an act of defiance had instead become a comprehensive intelligence gift. The strike group systems had recorded flight paths, frequencies, response times, command links, and geographic origins. The attack had mapped itself. Analysts aboard escort ships and distant command centers began piecing together a clear picture of the network behind the strike, who launched, who commanded, and how information flowed between them. Hours later, The response came not as an emotional reaction, but as a calculated correction. Precision strikes targeted select military assets directly tied to the attack. Radar installations that had guided weapons, storage sites that had supplied them, and command nodes that coordinated their launch. There was no barrage, no indiscriminate destruction. Each strike served a purpose, removing capability rather than seeking spectacle. For those on the receiving end, the experience was disorienting. There was no warning buildup, no visible enemy in the sky. Communications went silent. What had seemed like a bold offensive action now felt like the opening move in a game where the rules had never been fully understood. The carrier itself remained distant and almost indifferent. Aircraft continued launching and recovering. Sailors returned to their routines. The floating city of steel had not needed to chase its attackers. It had simply waited, observed, and allowed the consequences to arrive on their own schedule. This restraint was intentional. The message was not one of rage, but of inevitability. Internationally, reactions were cautious. No victory was claimed. The absence of noise spoke louder than any declaration. Analysts noted the pattern. Escalation had been avoided, but capability had been decisively reduced. The balance of power had been reinforced without widening the conflict. In the end, the big mistake was not attacking the carrier, it was misunderstanding what it represented. A Nimitz-class carrier is not just a ship. It is a node in a vast patience system designed to absorb pressure, collect information, and respond at a time and place of its choosing. The story closes with a stark realization settling across the region. Strength is not always loud, and dominance does not always announce itself. Sometimes, the most decisive response is the one that comes after the attacker believes the moment has passed.